Good afternoon. On behalf of the FIU School of Music, Director Karen Fuller-Velos, and my colleagues who are present, I welcome you. Those of you who are here in person, and those of you who are joining us on the live stream. My name is Vindia Kare, and I'm the coordinator of vocal performance. And I'm looking at the most people we have had in this beautiful auditorium since before COVID. And I want to thank you all for following the COVID protocols we have in place. We are here to remember Sarah. Each one of us has a unique relationship with her. You knew her as your student, colleague, mentor, friend, granddaughter, sister, daughter, and wife. And while we are united in our deep sorrow, we are here to celebrate her life. Sebastian wanted a concert to honor Sarah, where she would sing for us. He said all she wanted was to sing for people. We're going to give her that. So we're not in a church. We're in this beautiful concert hall, which will serve as our sacred space. And how fitting it is that we gather at the FIU School of Music, because this is where many of us had our first encounter with Sarah. We remember the stunning, statuesque, red lipsticked young woman with an infectious optimism and sincere and generous heart and a soul with so many deep layers and with a voice of incredible power and beauty. And she made all of us believe we could do it, whatever that it was for us. I'd like to share a quote attributed to one of my favorite childhood philosophers, Winnie the Pooh. How lucky I am to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard. I first met Sarah here at FIU 10 years ago when we were both students. It was the fall semester of 2011. She had transferred from Broward College and I was starting my master's degree. We were both in the studio of Robert Dundas and we called ourselves Team Dundas. Sarah became one of my dearest friends, and it didn't matter that I was more than 20 years older than her. We encouraged each other, we studied together, many times with a bottle of red wine that Sarah would bring. We would go shopping together for dresses to perform in, and we drank countless pumpkin spice lattes. Several of us here, many of us here, were in opera workshop and concert choir with Sarah. And we have very special memories of making music with her right here in this hall. Later in the program, we will sing together, reunited for the first time, to honor our friend. Sarah gave the gift of life. She was an organ donor. A 59-year-old man received her heart and will now live. A 33-year-old woman and a 32-year-old man received her kidneys and will no longer need to be on dialysis 3 days a week. A 55-year-old woman and a 61-year-old woman both have had their sight restored because they have Sarah's corneas. Sarah had a profound, life-changing impact on these individuals who never even met her. Yet part of her lives in them. How extraordinary. And how lucky we are to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard. If you didn't have a chance to sign the guest book, I hope you will after. Please write your email address so the family can contact you. There will be a scholarship created in Sarah's name, which you will receive more information about. Before we begin, please take a moment to double check that your phone is silenced. And while it is not mandatory, I would encourage you to wear your mask over your nose and mouth while indoors. I would like to thank Naomi Mercado for creating these beautiful programs and for organizing the slideshows and videos. And thanks to her family for providing the post-concert reception, which we will enjoy after outside in the rotunda. I would also like to thank the FIU School of Music Senior Special Events Manager Natalie Brenner for helping us with guest registration and all of the volunteers, to Paul Stainsland, the FIU School of Music Technical Director, and Director of the FIU School of Music, Karen Fuller-Velos, for making it possible for us to use the Wertheim Performing Arts Center to honor Sarah. So we will begin with members of the music fraternity Sigma Alpha Iota.
Hello everyone, my name is Catherine Magarino. I'm a sister of Sigma Alpha Iota International Music Fraternity. Sarah was a beloved sister of our fraternity, and today we'll be performing the prayerful and meditative benediction song that is performed at memorial ceremonies for sisters who have passed. The lyrics are from the biblical book of Numbers, chapter 6, and the music was composed by Sister Louise Mueller. The lyrics are as follows. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen. We love you, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Jason Ferrante.
And I'm Richard Oyersaba.
We are in Santa Fe, New Mexico today, and so sorry we can't be there in person, but just wanted to thank all of you for gathering today in memory of our beloved Sarah. Not only was she like family to us, but I've had the privilege of being in the voice studio with her for the last 6 or 7 years, and that is a voice that will never stop ringing. Mostly because it was full of so much life, but also it was just the loudest thing you've ever heard in your life. People larger than life like Sarah live forever, and I look forward to thinking about her every day.
All our thoughts and prayers to the family and friends who love and adore Sarah, and will continue to do so.
Hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you. Okay. Can we do the same thing?
Uh-huh.
Let's do it. And does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Susan Danis, and I'm the General Director of Florida Grand Opera. And first of all, on behalf of the opera and all its families and members, wanted to express our deepest sympathy to you, Sebastian, and your family, of course, Heidi and your family, and everyone in this room who has a little ache in their heart that wasn't there just a couple of weeks ago. I don't really need to tell anyone in this room how amazing Sarah was. It's going to be an afternoon of that celebration of who she was as a human and who she was as a singer. So I thought I would just share with you some of my favorite moments from the years that I met Sarah. I still remember the day that Julie Makowski, a past artistic administrator of ours, told me, I have these 3 singers you have to hear. And it was Edgar Abreu, Laura Leon, and this very, very tall and statuesque blonde, Sarah Payne. And when the 3 of them came in, the energy in that room was just palpable. But there was this special light from Sarah that I'm not sure I'd ever quite seen before. She had to be one of the most appreciative singers. Just as was mentioned before when Jason spoke, she just wanted to sing, she just wanted to perform. And I cannot recount the number of times that she's thanked me for the chances and the opportunities she had on stage, especially getting to sing the cover of Norma. But for me, it became about the work I got to do with Sarah, as I introduced Sarah to the other side of our world. I remember when she finished as a studio artist, she took on the role of running the education department, and she ran our dress rehearsal program, she ran special programs we had with children that definitely were in need, and her empathy and her ability to engage those young children and involve them and get them to children who would never be exposed to opera, to get that opportunity was truly, truly amazing. Frankly, there was nothing that Sarah couldn't do. I would just begin to tell Sarah something about, Sarah, can you help me with? And she'd go, okay. And she said that all the time. And as you walk through a task with her, when she got it, she would look at me and say, got it. And those were the serious parts of working with Sarah. When she came back to Miami, there was no one happier than me. And as timidly as she tried to ask me if there was work at FGO for her, I couldn't get yes out fast enough. I wasn't sure what she was going to do exactly, but Sarah's always been a part of our family, always will be, and absolutely phenomenal. She came in, here's a woman fresh from her master's degree, and she and I wrote 6 of the opera's toughest grants in her first 10 weeks of coming back to work at the top of this year. And she was phenomenal at it. That same care and energy and everything that she put into this incredible voice, she put into everything that she did. This all sounds very serious, but Sarah and I grew incredibly close since the top of this year. I think we had lunch together every day. We laughed all the time. As serious as what we all do is, we laughed all the time. She was fiercely protective of me, and she called me Queen. So of course, in Sarah's true way of always being engaging, I became Elizabeth, and she became Margaret. And every day, she talked about it constantly, and she'd come up and say, oh, Elizabeth, how are you today? And I wish I could tell you some of the jokes that dissolved into, but might not quite be the right time and place. And every day she'd ask me, do you want a foggy? And for those of you who are Starbucks fans, you know what a foggy is. And we must have consumed more Earl Grey tea and laughter than I can even imagine. But we always had fun. One of the other highlights of the day was that Sebastian would create cat content, because if you didn't know, Sarah's 2 beloved cats were such a big part of her life, and she would run up usually at some point in the afternoon and say, I have cat content, and it'd be something wonderful that Sebastian had created for us to enjoy. She was wonderful. The other incredible experience was that in the midst of all this, the opera actually did a live season, and our team did all the backstage roles. And you know Sarah, you say, Sarah, will you do this? Sure. I mean, literally her hands would go up like this, and I couldn't even get it out. And then one day she says to me, I have to tell you something. I said, what? She says, because you're so eager. And she said, Sebastian's nickname for me is the Eager Beaver. And so after that, her nickname was absolutely the Eager Beaver, because that indeed she was. We worked backstage doing wardrobe for this little season, and Sarah just had this whole world from being a singer to like, oh my goodness, I can't believe everything that goes into being, to making a production happen. And, Sarah's just going along with the flow, and then came our first quick change, a 37-second quick change. And Sarah's eyes just got really big, and she just started following me around like a puppy, like, what do I do? What do I do? And within about 3 days, she had mastered that skill and had a blast. She even worked the rail one of the shows. Truly, there was nothing that Sarah didn't do at FGO, and every single thing that she did well. And most importantly, the thing she did the best was being my sister and my friend, and I will never forget her. And so, in a small way, for the Florida Grand Opera to honor Sarah, fully funded at this point by just the staff and our board, each of our studio hours is sponsored each year, and Sarah was sponsored when she was there, and there will be the Sarah Payne Hernandez studio artist this coming year at Florida Grand Opera in honor of Sarah and everything she is to us. There's a hole in our organization that will never, ever, ever be filled. Just like there's a little tiny place in all of our hearts. But I know we all have incredible memories of her, and I hope that you can call upon those in those little dark moments and just remember how blessed we all were to have her in our life. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Sebastian and Sarah's family, for inviting me to speak today. I hope I can get through it. Hearing Sarah's voice in this hall again reminds me so poignantly of the many times that Sarah strode across this very stage. And it was here, back in October of 2014, that she first publicly sang Die Teure Halle, which I'm quite sure was the first time anyone had sung anything like that in this hall. And I think it was very appropriate that, and probably that singing of that aria, greeting a glorious, precious hall, thoroughly anointed this hall when she sang it for everyone that day. And I remember we put it on a departmental recital, which we have regularly here at the School of Music. And so it was just students and faculty in the room. And everyone thought they sort of knew Sarah's voice. And so I don't know if they knew what they were going to get, but I remember standing in the back of the hall, eagerly waiting to see the reaction of everyone in this hall as soon as she let loose with those first notes. And much to my great gratification, everyone just sort of jolted awake and were just totally on the edges of their seats, watching her and listening to her all the way through. And of course, they all cheered her at that time, just like they did, like all of you did here. So it was one of many, many very special moments. Like all of you, I've been overwhelmed by shock and grief at Sarah's passing, and also flooded with memories of her time here at FIU. I know we do not have time for a complete chronicle of Sarah's career at FIU, but she made a strong impact on us all, not only here on this stage, but also deep in our hearts. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been going through all my old email exchanges with Sarah, and I actually found the first email she ever sent to me. Unlike many emails from prospective students, Sarah's email was very clear, straightforward, and professional. Identifying herself as a transfer student from Broward College, assuring me that she had read all the audition information on the website, and wishing to arrange an audition for the FIU Vocal Studies program. That was on November 29th, 2010. So even before I had heard her voice, I could tell that she had learned to be respectful and professional in all her interactions, and very intentional in how she expressed herself. However, we were not able to assign her an audition date until March of 2011. So as you can imagine, after 4 months of waiting, she was a bit overeager, and she may have tried a little too hard to impress all of us when she came here. But there was no question in my mind that there was a very fine voice there, striving to emerge. In the post-audition interview, I asked her all the usual questions, one of which is, what would you like to do after you've completed your studies at FIU? Almost immediately, she blurted out, I want to sing opera. It wasn't the first time I had heard that declaration from a young singer, but from Sarah it sounded particularly heartfelt, desperate, and even a little apologetic, almost as if she didn't know whether she was worthy. Of course, we admitted her to the program, and she became a member of my studio. At the first lesson, I followed up and asked her to explain her I want to sing opera declaration. And she told me about having seen a production by Florida Grand Opera at the Broward Center and coming away knowing that that was what she wanted to be, an opera singer. As she elaborated on the subject, she began to pour her heart out to me, and I could tell she was already getting a little emotional. And I remind you, this was just the first lesson. So I completely changed the subject, and I thought I'd better start vocalizing her. Along the way, we talked about what she already knew about singing, and thanks to her teachers at Broward College, I could tell that she had already received a very good foundation. I could also tell that she was a little self-conscious and worried about the size of her voice and whether she could learn to manage it. I told her at the time that she shouldn't think of her voice as big and unwieldy, but to think of it as a large, uncut diamond with dozens of facets, both large and small, that just needed to be polished. We spoke very frankly about the amount of work she needed to do, and I told her that her voice could become something very rare and beautiful if she worked on it with patience and sensitivity. So we went to work, both of us patiently revealing and polishing the innumerable facets of that fabulous diamond. Sometimes the work was a bit daunting and frustrating to Sarah, and a few tears would be shed, but she had this indomitable and determined spirit that would emerge again and again, no matter the obstacle. Sarah's time at FIU coincided with a period when we had other very fine voices in the program, many of them assembled here. It allowed me to produce operas that were suitable not just for Sarah's voice, but for theirs as well. And Sarah was involved in 3 operas that were significant milestones for us at FIU. Handel's Agrippina, Britten's Turn of the Screw, Kurt Weill's Street Scene. Each of them allowed Sarah to show us on stage her vast emotional range. Perhaps her family and friends already knew this about her, but I didn't know she was such a comedienne. She was so very funny playing the role of Poppaea in Agrippina. And she astonished me by the depths of her compassion and understanding she had for the more complicated characters of the governess in Turn of the Screw and Anna Morant in Street Scene. She identified deeply with all the women she portrayed, in all their complexity, their passions, their doubts, and their sorrows. Very shortly, we will be seeing an excerpt of Sarah portraying the governess in a production with the Miami Classical Music Festival. She first created that role, though, here on this stage. I remember talking to her about the age of the governess and how she and Sarah were very likely the same age. And I asked her to think about how she herself would react to the situations and conditions that confronted the governess in the opera. In her work over the course of the rehearsal, Sarah demonstrated the same level of integrity, determination, and empathy, as well as the occasional self-doubts as the governess herself. She struggled at times with the difficulty of the music and the emotional challenges of the opera, but she threw herself into the process. The final result was a remarkably mature and complex portrayal. Perhaps the most gratifying performance for Sarah was her portrayal of Anna Morant in Street Scene. Rather than describe it in my own words, I'll let the words of the critic for the South Florida Classical Review describe Sarah's accomplishment. Sarah Payne emerged triumphant as the ill-fated Anna Morant, an expressive dramatic soprano with a powerful upper register. Payne's diction was impeccable, the text clear and given strong dramatic inflection. In the aria, Somehow I Could Never Believe, she encapsulated Anna's mood swings from early daydreams of love to despair of her hapless existence. Upon reading that, Sarah was understandably ecstatic, not just for the great review, but that she knew she was being recognized and taken seriously as what she always wanted to be, an opera singer. I wasn't just happy for Sarah, but I was also very happy for her mom, Heidi, who I think finally saw in print the realization of her own hopes and dreams for Sarah. Together, Heidi and I shed a lot of very proud and happy tears after that and many other Sarah performances. It's difficult to know when, where, or how a tremendous talent will emerge. A lot of things coalesced for Sarah while she was at FIU. She was fortunate to work with great and experienced coaches and conductors who knew the repertoire and how to introduce a young singer to it. Some of it, of course, came from the rehearsal process and her interactions with her teachers and fellow students. And you, her fellow students, the alumni sitting here, I hope that all of you, her fellow alumni, know how much you helped Sarah to become the artist that we are remembering here today. Thank you, all of you. But her profound empathy for her characters and for all of us as well came from somewhere else. I'm sure it was another gift that she was born with, but I'm also sure it was something nurtured by her family. And I thank her parents and the rest of her family for entrusting Sarah to us here at FIU. I hope you know that she was in good hands. As a teacher, I've always tried not to be possessive of my students. I see my role as that of the person preparing a young singer to take on the challenges of the real world. I want my students to recognize when they are working with a great teacher or coach, and I want to also give them the tools to respond to direction from any professional they may work with. While she was at FIU, I encouraged Sarah to apply for summer study programs, preferably those that would get her out of Miami and among talented singers and excellent teachers from around the world. I wanted her to see how she measured up with her peers. I also invited excellent master teachers to come to FIU to work with our students. And it was on one of these occasions that Helen Donat, the eminent American soprano, was giving a master class, and she heard Sarah for the first time. I have to admit, on that occasion, I was a bit apprehensive because I wanted to be sure that I hadn't been overestimating in my own mind Sarah's potential. Miss Donat sat in a chair at the front of the room opposite Sarah and her accompanist, and as soon as she heard the first notes of Sarah's aria, Helen sat bolt upright and looked over at me with an astonished expression, seeming to ask me why hadn't I given her any warning of what to expect. After Sarah finished singing, Helen leaped out of her chair, rolled up her sleeves, and began working very intensively with Sarah. Sarah was elated and somewhat exhausted by the workout, but I was so proud of how well she understood and responded to Helen's direction. It was no surprise to me that Helen invited Sarah to take part in her annual master classes at the International Summer Academy in Salzburg, Austria, the following summer. During her stay in Salzburg, I arranged for Sarah to stay at the home of a friend who lived there, the mezzo-soprano Catherine Goldner. Kathy, who sings frequently at the Met, is no stranger to dramatic voices, and she was equally impressed with Sarah's voice. Kathy also was deeply impressed by Sarah's warm and self-effacing personality, something that she said was very rare in this profession. Both Kathy and Helen have told me how very sad and shocked they are by Sarah's passing, and they asked me personally to extend their love, their prayers, and condolences to Sebastian, Sarah's family, and all her friends and colleagues here today. Encouraging my students to attend summer study programs and introducing them to master teachers and professional singers is one of the ways that I also prepare myself for that time that I have to let a student go. After their final degree recital or their final role with FIU Opera, I want to see them move on to graduate school or directly into the profession and begin working with the best of professionals out there. Managing these introductions is my way of making sure that they are in good hands, that they are with someone who recognizes just how special this voice, this person is. I did the same with Sarah, and I was thrilled when she was invited to be a young artist at FGO after she graduated. For Sarah, it was like coming home, Susan. Thank you. I was gratified and proud to see all the other choices that Sarah made in her post-FIU career. She always told me who she was working with, and whether it was another teacher, a coach, or conductor, or stage director. She knew she could talk to me about these things, and that I wouldn't be critical or jealous. I think she knew that I also needed to know that she was in good hands. I was also touched when she included me in news about her personal life. Sebastian, she was so very happy and fulfilled being married to you. And she was so looking forward to that special ceremony that both of you were planning in October. I think she must have reminded me about a dozen times to save the date, save the date, save the date, because she really wanted me to be there. I'm particularly grateful, Sebastian, that you understood her needs as a singer and supported everything she was doing, because I know she appreciated it. In recent years, Sarah was busy, happy, and finding fulfillment in everything she was doing, always polishing another facet of that magnificent diamond. And I knew she was in good hands, and I thank everyone in this room who were working with her over the past several years. I had prepared Sarah and myself for this stage of her career. But I wasn't prepared for her to suddenly and abruptly leave this earth. I didn't realize how much I was harboring my own dreams for her future, how I wanted to see her stride across more stages and hear her sing in larger, greater opera houses around the world. I was prepared to let her go and take flight as a singer, knowing that I would share in her adventures and her successes. I was ready for all that, but I wasn't ready for this, her passing from our lives. However, even though it is very difficult for me to accept her loss, I know that she is in good hands, the greatest hands, the hands of her Creator, the one who formed that beautiful woman, her remarkable voice, and her enormous heart. Even though I may feel bereft and bewildered about our shared loss, I know that her great soul, her enormous spirit, and that magnificent voice are resounding in heaven. She gave herself fully to all of us during her time here on earth. She touched us all with her great voice, her big heart, and her generosity of spirit. I'm clinging to these memories now and finding solace in them. And I keep reminding myself that she's in great hands. Thank you.
Light, love, beauty, warmth. Sarah Payne. I first met Sarah here, in this very room, this beautiful concert hall. It was a joint concert with the FIU Wind Ensemble playing alongside the choir. We are doing The Promise of Living from Aaron Copland's opera, The Tenderlands. A beautiful piece which Sarah maintained was the only piece in that whole opera that didn't bore her. In that first rehearsal, here on this stage, we reached the end of the piece, a grand, majestic moment, maestoso, with the whole group playing or singing their loudest. And perched right on top of this giant wall of sound was Sarah's. Her voice soared over everyone else's while simultaneously maintaining a beautiful blended sound. Never has the phrase icing on the cake been so perfectly exemplified to me in a musical experience. And I remember Dr. Alston cut off and I was just absolutely astounded. And the moment that baton was down, I turned around, searching for whatever giant speaker was projecting these amazing noises, only to be met with Sarah's beautiful gray eyes, towards which I mouthed, wow, nice, and I gave her one of these. I remember spending some extra time in the practice room that evening. She was so on her game that I was inspired to do what I could to make sure my part was similarly up to snuff. I'm sure many of you here listening have been similarly inspired by Sarah's musical excellence to want to progress and develop their own musicking. You all know exactly what I heard. You think this is good. Live is like chef's kiss. She was an undeniable force of music, a stunning display of feminine power. Get too close to her during a practice session and you feel your brain vibrate. One auditioner shared to her that she has a Cadillac of a voice. But her voice was not the most beautiful thing about her. It was merely the hook that drew me and so many others to her, that made us want to come around and meet the person Who could produce such beautiful sounds? It wasn't only her voice that reached me, but her whole being. The night we actually got together was actually a few months later at my birthday party. This was back in 2014. At this point, we were still like friendly acquaintances. But she walked in with this amazing red-pink dress. And before I could even get over how good she looked, she was asking me, all right, what do you need? How can I help? This woman who I've spoken to for no longer than 5 minutes at that point, and she was already helping host my party. This was the kind of person that she was. The kind to put others before herself, to care for others so deeply and with such impact that anybody in her path can sense it, to love others fiercely and intensely, especially if that other person was actually a cat. This was Sarah's true gift. Her unmatched ability to support and inspire others. It stemmed from the sheer love that emanated from her like a lantern from her entire being. It is the legacy that she leaves us. A legacy of light and love that shines forth in every future embrace, every piece of kindness extended, and every act of loving another. I'd like to end with a poem by John O'Donohue entitled On the Death of the Beloved. Though we need to weep your loss, you dwell in that safe place in our hearts, where no storm or night or pain can reach you. Your love was like the dawn, brightening over our lives, awakening beneath the dark, a further adventure of color. The sound of your voice found for us a new music that brightened everything. Whatever you unfolded in your gaze quickened in the joy of its being. You placed smiles like flowers on the altar of the heart. Your mind always sparkled with wonder at things. Though your days here were brief, your spirit was live, awake, complete. We look towards each other no longer from the old distance of our names. Now, you dwell inside the rhythm of breath, as close to us as we are to ourselves. Though we cannot see you with outward eyes, we know our soul's gaze is upon your face, smiling back at us from within everything, to which we bring our best refinement. Let us not look for you only in memory, where we would grow lonely without you. You would want us to find you in presence, beside us when beauty brightens, when kindness glows, and music echoes eternal tones. When orchids brighten the earth, darkest winter has turned to spring. May this dark grief flower with hope. in every heart that loves you. May you continue to inspire us to enter each day with a generous heart, to serve the call of courage and love until we see your beautiful face again in that land where there is no more separation, where all tears will be wiped from our mind, and where we will never lose you again. Thank you so much.
Sarah's mother, Heidi O'Callahan, asked me to read the words she has written for Sarah, and it is my honor to do this for you. Sarah was born literally screaming at the top of her lungs, which is a great thing for a newborn baby to do. One of the nurses even commented, "Wow, what a set of lungs she has." Yes, God already had a plan for her. I called her my angel baby from the day she was born, and I called her my angel to the end. Sarah was stubborn and headstrong from the beginning, too, a sign of her tremendous strength to come. She commanded me at age 3 to sit right there, Mommy, don't move. I'm going to make a show for you. At least she allowed me to get a cup of tea while she prepared, but I had to come right back and sit on the couch and wait. She would emerge from her room, sometimes with her best friend Jenny, and then Jenny's little sister Megan, who would join in, and they would put on a show that Sarah just made up. Songs, dances, music, and laughter would fill the room every time. It was then she learned to take a bow. At age 10, in 5th grade, Sarah was chosen to be in the Broward County All Honors Choir for the first time. 210 and 11-year-old children were singing in 5-part harmony, their angelic voices bringing me to tears the first time I heard them. I shuttled them to and from the rehearsals every Monday afternoon for 8 weeks, and one day I was allowed to come in and listen. I still get misty when I remember that day. Sarah was in All County for 8 years, and without bias, I maintain that the elementary choir that Sarah was in was the best of those. Only one of the songs in their program was in English. So began Sarah's learning to sing in different languages that included Swahili, Latin, German, and French. Sarah was in the Nova Middle School and then the Nova High School chorus every year, for which she got multiple awards and superior ratings in competition. She was in the All-State chorus for 5 of those years. The best in the state gathered in Tampa, and each group had its concert. The music they made was incredible. They too had the voices of angels and sang in different languages, few of their songs ever in English. Sarah loved her all-state experiences, getting to study and be directed by expert clinicians from whom she learned so much. Video and still photos of her during these concerts looked the same, singing with eyes fixed on the conductor, fully focused. She yearned to learn more and more about music. It was during these all-state experiences that she learned to really dig in and study her music, to be absolutely on point and prepared for everything, this work ethic serving her well from that time. Her beautiful soprano voice began to develop, and by the time she was a senior, she had solo parts, and you could hear her above the rest of the sopranos, her powerful voice beginning to really come into its own. Sarah got a voice scholarship and a volleyball scholarship too to Broward College, where she studied for 2 years, her instructors knowing just how far to safely push her emerging voice. Sarah then came to Florida International University and studied with her beloved Professor Robert Dundas. He chose her to be his student when she auditioned for her opera studies. He saw something in her that he knew was special. Papa Dundas brought her to the next level again, also knowing just how far to safely push her developing big soprano voice. She performed in the FIU operas, something she absolutely loved. She would call me every day after her lessons with Dundas to tell me what high notes she hit that day, how she navigated a difficult passage, how she triumphantly mastered a technically difficult piece. Oh, the joy in her voice. She loved her Papa Dundas so much, and the feeling was mutual. Sarah graduated with her Bachelor of Music degree in 2014. Sarah then auditioned for Florida Grand Opera's Young Artist Program and spent 2 years as a young artist and then a year as a studio musician. I am pleased to tell you this story, something that makes me as proud of my Sarah as almost anything she has ever done. As young artists, they were assigned opera roles to cover, to understudy, or they were assigned roles to actually sing on stage in an opera, getting their assignment several months before the season opened. Sarah sang the role of Clotilde in Vincenzo Bellini's Norma. She studied it in her usual laser-focused way, learning it well, as she always did a role. Then, 3 weeks before opening, she was assigned to learn to cover the lead role of Norma, one of the most difficult, I'm told, in the soprano repertoire. She was only expected to learn some of the role. The day before opening night, the young artist did the cover run, where they all would sing the roles they've learned, that they understudied, knowing that, if need be, they might be called upon to perform the role on stage. I drove down on no sleep and was permitted to sit in on the cover run. Within the first 2 minutes of the cover run, Sarah slammed her music book shut and slid the book across the floor and sang the entire role of Norma from memory, having learned it in just 2 weeks. She didn't need her score. She had it down, and she sang it with absolute authority. I was a puddle of tears of pride for my fierce Sarah. That day, she was Norma, powerful to the end. She hoped to sing it professionally one day. However, for this opera, she was Norma's confidant, Clotilde, for which she got a very fine review in the paper. This mom still cannot express how proud I was of her then. A ferocious pride that continued to her last day here on earth and will continue for all eternity. While at FGO, she studied with renowned tenor Jason Ferrante, and they formed a beautiful friendship and literally became one of the family. Oh, the beautiful music they made together. Sarah would call me after her lessons with Jason and again tell me about all the new things she was learning, the next high note she reached, oftentimes saying, "And it was so easy, Mom." I went right to it and sustained it for a long time. She was so proud of her advancements, her accomplishments, having worked so hard to achieve them. Sarah also had the privilege of studying with Karen Levine for 7 years. Karen, a master musician, voice coach, pianist, conductor, and longtime prompter with the Metropolitan Opera in New York, also saw something in Sarah during the Miami Summer Music Festival and said to her, "I must work with you." And so began a special relationship that transcended student-teacher bonds, bringing her to yet another level, bringing her to where she was ready to sing professionally. Sarah went to New York to the new school, the Mannes School of Music, where she earned her master's degree in opera performance, which she finished in May 2020. She and her husband, Sebastian, really enjoyed their time in New York as they both pursued their master's degrees. But their time in New York was cut short by the COVID-19 pandemic, and as their schools shut down, so did the world of opera, putting a halt to Sarah's being able to pursue her career in opera. Sarah and Sebastian came back to Miami, where they completed their master's degree, and she landed a job at Florida Grand Opera, where she ultimately became company manager. Sarah loved working with Susan Danis. She learned many facets of the business of opera, and with each position she had, she learned more and more, again, always thirsting for new knowledge. She loved her job at FGO and began to study once again with her beloved Jason. Again, the phone calls came after every lesson with him, excitement at what she had learned, mastered, and just the absolute fun she had singing. I just heard the clip from their last lesson for the first time. Yes, she called me after that lesson too. All giddy, talking to me nonstop about all they had done. She was so happy that day. Sarah's love for her beloved husband, Sebastian, was immeasurable. Their love was a fairy tale in real life. They were truly a perfect match, the perfect couple. She was so happy. They were married in a beautiful private family ceremony last October. I couldn't have handpicked a better man for Sarah to spend her life with than Sebastian. Our Sarah had a zest for life, a need to do her best at all times, to grab life and to live it to the best of her ability every day. She had a joy about her, a happiness and love that came from deep inside, a sudden sunshine that filled the room when she walked in or called, and a desire to help others whenever she could. She was loved by all who knew her, and she's spreading her love to all for all eternity. Thank you all for being a special part of our Sarah's life. To honor Sarah, I would like to ask each and every one of you to promise Sarah this. Live your lives to the fullest every day. Pursue your dreams. Have fun. Choose to be happy, to be kind, to remember what Sarah did to make you happy, and to spread that happiness every day. Love each other deeply, fully, unconditionally. Love life. Promise me, promise Sarah. Say it with me. I promise.
I promise. Mr.